Nope.
Hello, dear listeners, and happy Halloween. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, you can call me Captain Creepy, and I'll be your guide for the finale of this Halloween 2018 special. If you haven't heard parts 1 and 2, then what the hell are you doing? I'm sorry for the outburst. I get a little excited this time of year, you understand. Now, before you impatient listeners start typing your little comments urging me to get to the story, don't worry. The finale of I Found My Suicide Note from years ago, I Didn't Write It, begins now. Enjoy.
I had reached my conclusion. At this point, it was very clear to me who had written the suicide note in the first place, broke into my house, kicked my ass, and left me bleeding on the floor. I pretended as though everything was okay as the day went on. I would steal discreet glances at my brother whenever he wasn't paying attention, wondering why he had written the note in the first place. What could I have possibly done to him growing up? Sure, he was definitely more like Dad, a macho man who liked playing sports and going hunting. Dad was a retired construction worker, and my brother had followed his footsteps. I, however, had always been more like Mom, bookish, clever, and a people person. The reason I had gotten into psychology was due to the fact that it was her line of study too. Despite our differences, however, my brother and I never had any issues. At least I thought so, until recent developments. My brother's wife, Veronica, showed up later in the day. My mom and Mac both decided to take naps, but my dad insisted on staying awake and sitting in his favorite chair with a pistol in his lap. "I'll give that asshole something to steal," he said as he stared through the window into the front yard. He lasted all of 5 minutes before he was snoring just as loudly as Mac was upstairs. Veronica asked if I wanted to go to the park with her and Elliot, but I declined. Once she pulled out of the driveway, I knew that I had my chance. I grabbed Mac's keys from the counter and snuck out to his truck. Though he had tossed a jacket over them, I found quite the collection of things in a box. For starters, my mom's, Dad's, Mac's, and my own cell phone were all there. My house key, which I figured had been easy for Mac to swipe from my parents, was there. And there were 3 different books. I glanced towards the house just to be sure I was still alone, and then examined the books closely. One of them was falling apart and covered in dust, clearly from the attic. The title read, La Livre de Contrôle de Henderson, and looked to have been written in French, though in later pages of the book, English had been scrawled. I didn't bother reading. The other 2 books were the real bread and butter, because I recognized one of them. I hadn't seen the red cover in years. It was my journal, which I had stopped writing in when I was probably 15 or 16 years old. The 3rd book was green, with the name Mac scribbled sloppily in the front. I swiped both journals and all of the cell phones. If I found answers, I would need to get the police involved as quickly as possible. I couldn't risk Mac waking up and leaving the house with the phones in his possession. I made my way to the backyard and hid my own and my mom's phone under a few rocks near the back door. These were the ones that were most important in the event something happened to me. I knew the cops would search the premises for clues. This evidence seemed to incriminate my mother, but I knew all it would take was a fingerprint examination to discover that my brother had been the one at my house last night. I found a secluded spot behind a tree and flipped open my brother's journal. There were mostly the typical things you'd expect a kid to write about, but there were other strange things sprinkled in too. Grandpa says I'm not good enough to carry the family legacy. He says I will never be more than a sheep. Darby is their favorite. I know it. Dad takes me hunting, but Darby is the one who brings home good grades and awards. Mom even says he is too smart. I don't remember doing my chores, but Darb says I did them. I think I have memory loss or cancer or something. I forget doing a lot of things. Maybe Dad will take me to the hospital. As Mac got older, however, his journal entries began to focus on regular things teenage boys would write about. I didn't find anything cruel or any sort of jealous words about myself in those pages. I then turned my attention to some orange-inked entries from my own journal. Dad took Mac out of school early to go and watch the baseball game. That's fine with me. Grandpa says I don't have time for sports. He says he will teach me the family way when I get old enough. Grandpa died in his sleep. I've been crying all night, but Dad says everything will be okay. I asked him if he will teach me the family way, but he didn't know what I was talking about. Mom has been trying to teach me some weird words, but all I remember is sis nivere, plai moi, and something like dulare. I'd much rather go to the science fair today. I think she knows it. Mom says I need to stop, but I'm better at this than her anyway. She can barely make Dad mow the lawn when he doesn't feel like it anymore. I can make Mac do whatever I tell him to. If he was smart, I would make him do my extra credit work, but I know Miss Norris would fail me. Though she can resist it sometimes, I can make my mom do things too. Mac and Dad don't remember when they are under my control, but Mom does. I'm pretty sure Mom threatened me today. She says that unless I renounce my ways, or elonge mon esprit, then something bad will happen. I don't want her to hurt Dad or Mac, so I may go through with it. I'm not afraid for myself. I know she can't control me. That was the last entry in the journal. To my horror, I realized that I had managed to remember only the orange ink from my past. Nothing about any of this had ever been recollected in my mind. What the hell was really going on here? I felt a sharp blow to the back of my head. Stunned, I slumped over, and then my brother was on me again. Mac's eyes seemed so void of emotion as he reared back his fist, hitting me several more times. Once I was dazed enough, he began binding my legs together with rope. In my daze, I could make out my mother standing slightly behind him, surveying me with cold eyes. I wanted to say something, but my mouth was numb again, and my mind was slow. Once Mac tied my wrists behind my back, Mom muttered, "La Mason," and he hauled me into the house by my collar. I was regaining my senses as he threw me hard onto the floor. He then stood back, crossing his arms, his swollen fists now bleeding. Mom! Mom, what the hell is going on? I spat in anger. My mother had her arms crossed as well. Dad was still fast asleep in his chair, his gun slowly slipping out of his grip. You forced me to do this, Darby. You've always had the family talent. I'll give it to you. You probably didn't even need the damn book to invade the minds of weaker people. I thought my father and grandmother were adept at it. But you took to it to greater levels. You even made teachers give you grades you didn't deserve. Though you were so smart, none of that was even necessary. I was wary of you. But once you started dipping into my mind, well, that couldn't do. Dad! I yelled, and my father jerked awake, the pistol falling onto the floor. He took one look at us, but before he could even open his mouth, my mother shouted, Somamiel! My dad's eyes dimmed, and he fell to the floor, apparently in a deep sleep. I turned back to this woman, who I didn't recognize anymore. So what now, huh? Are you gonna kill him too? She shook her head. Oh, no. I can easily wipe his mind. But you, darling, well, you have reached the end of the line. I showed you mercy the first time. Even after you wiped your own memories, I still considered having your brother kill you. Even if the police connected the dots and figured out that you didn't do it to yourself, well, Mac would be the one doing time, not me. But I let you live. I let you prosper. I wanted you to give me grandchildren to train in the family art. But you don't have balls, apparently. I suppose Elliot will have to do. Maybe he has more willpower than his musclehead father. I was very aware of the pistol lying a few feet behind me. I only needed to stall a little longer. So why am I alive right now? You could have had Max snap my neck in the yard. You hid the phones. I'm gonna need those back, Darbs. And you're going to write a suicide note yourself this time. There are other ways I can make you do things. She turned towards the kitchen, where my father's toolbox sat open on the counter. I took this opportunity to leap for the gun. I landed right next to it, but before I could even get a grip on it, Mac kicked me in the back and bent down, picking it up for himself. Well, that just cost you an ear. I was gonna have your brother start with your toes, but you just had to be Clint Eastwood, didn't you? I shouted the first words that came to my mind. Pli moi! My brother relaxed now, as did my mother. I stared in complete disbelief at them. Whereas my brother seemed to have lost the light in his eyes, there was not only recognition, but rage in my mother's. I knew what I had to do. She was too dangerous to be left alive. Who knew what she would have done to my father, the police, a judge? I didn't know the words to say. So with tears running down my face, I spoke them in English. Mom, pick up the gun and shoot yourself in the head. There were tears streaming from her own eyes now. though whether they were from sadness or anger, I can never say. Once she did the deed, I told my brother to sleep, and he fell to the floor as well. Veronica found us just a few minutes later. I told the responding officers that my mom had hired someone to do the dirty work, but that when she failed, she decided to finish things herself. I claimed that I had talked her out of it, but she was so overcome with grief and guilt that she took her own life instead. We all cried, and I consoled my family as best as I could. I knew they could never know. I took the journals and the family book and burned them in a wooded area. I don't know if any of my mother's extended family know about the book or have the gift, but I'm not worried about them coming after me. I am better than them at this, after all.
Welcome back, dear listener. I do hope you enjoyed the conclusion of that riveting tale. If you did, find that thumbs up below and have your way with it. Subscribe for future videos and join the creepy crew by turning on notifications. For now, I must bid you all adieu, but I think I'll be seeing you again before you know it. Until that day comes, sweet, sweet listener, stay safe out there. I might just be seeing you